I'd like to introduce to you Dan Klinedinst. Dan is, most importantly, yes, Dan, you are the founder of Pittsburgh B-Sides, are you not?
One of them.
One of the founders of Pittsburgh B-Sides. And Dan is the... this is B-Sides number 7. That's right. And have you been all of them, Dan?
All but one.
All but one. And Dan is also the recipient of the prized black badge, the very first one. I don't, it's fine. Dan hacked this because he lost the very one that we gave him.
Thank you, Dan. That was Thank you, John.
You're welcome, Dan. And or Dan, like, well, maybe your kids helped out, right?
Oh, totally.
That is exactly it. But Dan, in fact, is a vulnerability researcher at CERT, just up the hill, and we've now designated B-Sides as the CERT CC reunion, annual reunion. It is. So I now turn it over to Dan Klinedinst. Thank you, Dan.
I'm one of the people from CERT here, and one of the lots of experts, including John.
You're right.
Okay, I know everybody's been eating pizza and drinking beer all day, and I'm going to throw a whole bunch of hexadecimal and mixed command lines at you and stuff, so try to keep it interesting. Yeah. Hopefully that's a good thing. I need to start with a few disclaimers. I'm going to talk about some vulnerabilities in fleet management systems. Vulnerabilities are public as of yesterday. We published the notes about these. So nothing new, 0 days, new secret sauce here. Vulnerabilities and issues that I'm going to talk about have all been fixed, so don't bother trying this at home. And all the information that I'm going to talk about is available in public documents like manuals and things like that. So there's literally no 0-day awesome secret sauce here. Just thought it was interesting. So finally, what I'm going to talk about fleet telematics, and it's an interesting area because the supply chain is very complex. So normally the vulnerabilities we handle, we get something in and it's a buffer overflow in some piece of software or whatever. In this case, it's not clear really where the vulnerability lies because you have an OEM that builds a device that's supposed to be programmed by an integrator and then sold by a carrier or reseller. So there's this long supply chain and it's not always obvious who you need to even talk to get the vulnerability fixed. And we went through quite a few weeks of trying to find the right person to talk to get these fixed. So that should cover me legally, right? So what are fleet telematics? There are lots of organizations that use fleets, probably lots of organizations that you work for use fleets. So some examples are long-haul trucking, local delivery, whether it's the pizza guy or the floral shop or whatever. Law enforcement, public safety, like fire trucks and ambulances, obviously. Service providers and contractors, so I see a ton of those like train air conditioning vehicles driving around and things. Municipal things, I've seen a lot of Duquesne light cars recently for some reason. And of course the military uses a lot of fleets of vehicles. So the point of telematics in vehicles is that they want to, a lot of it is because they want to be able to track their vehicles in their fleet, know where they're going, when they're going, how fast they're going, are they slamming on the brakes all the time. They collect other information too, gas mileage and maintenance information, things like that. So this is an example, you might be a fleet manager and look at your cars and say, okay, now I know where they all are. I'm not quite sure why, there's a whole bunch of them crowded around the church brewers there in the middle. I'm sure that's just a coincidence. But this has really been enabled by the fact that there are these very cheap telematics devices that can be added onto cars these days. A lot of them plug directly into the OBD2 port, which is required on all cars now since 1996. This is actually a fairly complicated one. We're going to be talking about this one a lot, but I've gotten ones off of eBay for $10. It's just a serial port connected to the CAN bus in your OBD2 port. It's super simple, super cheap, so it's really encouraging a lot of people to use these devices. Slightly more complicated, but still very cheap. There's devices that actually get hardwired into the cars. These are more used for commercial trucks, like police, ambulance, vehicles like that need a little bit more functionality. So what we've done is we've looked at a lot of these, and what we found is there's a ton of common vulnerabilities in these types of devices. Like I said, when you're getting something for $10, you're probably not getting like the best security in the universe. But across all of the ones that we looked at, we found a lot of common things. So weak or no authentication. So like you can connect to one of these devices via Wi-Fi with a known password of 1234 from 200 meters away. No encryption on the comms, so it's very unlikely that they're using SSL to do anything. If they are using SSL, a lot of times we find that they're not using it correctly, so we can still man and middle it. Unsigned firmware updates is more the standard than anything else. Like, I've very rarely seen people that sign their firmware updates, and we'll see why this is not such a good idea. But really, the main point is that these are root backdoors to your car. I mean, these connect to the OBD2 port, which is the little thing here. It's in all cars. That's connected directly to the network in the car called the CAN bus. It's connected to the power control module, the body control module, the door lock, brake, steering, all kinds of stuff. And on the other end of it, it's connected to the internet. So it's possibly a bad idea. The devices I'm going to talk about today are actually a little bit better than some of the ones I've looked at, but they're also more interesting to talk about because otherwise the talk would be like 2 seconds long. So the things I want to talk about today use cellular communications. So they've got a cellular modem built into those little devices that I showed a picture of. And there are known problems with cellular communications. So the order protocols for cellular, like GSM, they don't authenticate the base station or power they're connecting to. And worse than that, most devices that do cellular are more than happy to downgrade from newer protocol like LTE to GSM. So they reach out, the tower says, I'm sorry, I only speak GSM, and your phone or these devices say, oh, okay, well, I'd rather have something than nothing, so they can connect anyway. Often there's weak or no encryption on the cellular communications. I hate to tell you that. It is getting better in the US. They're mandating certain levels of encryption. But in other countries, it's not so good. So you work for a big international company, maybe you send shipping vehicles across the border to Mexico or something. You have no idea if they're using encryption at all on their cellular communications. And then finally, even in LTE, which is kind of the current cellular standards until 5G comes out, location tracking is possible. There's been a lot of really good papers on this. They can track LTE stations down to within a square kilometer or so with radio triangulation and stuff. We're going to get even better than that in these devices. But so there's known problems already in cellular, and now you're going to be sticking this in your car. And how do people do things to cellular? Well, probably all of you have heard of IMSI catchers, or one of the brand names is Stingrays. So the police and other not so great people, I'm sorry, that sounded like I was including the police with not so great people. Police, but also people that are not as good as the police, use IMSI catchers to grab cell phones. They basically do what I just described, which is they say, oh no, I only speak GSM, you're going to need to downgrade and talk to me that way. And the phone says, okay, yeah, sure, I'd be happy to talk to you. And now I don't authenticate the base station. So they can grab most, if not all, of your information. So to test these, we set up a little cellular lab. I'm going to go through this real quick because I know time-wise, probably this is not the most interesting thing. But so we have a little cellular lab. This is a Faraday tent. It basically blocks out all RF emissions in or out in one of the offices in our building. You can see it's nice and cozy in there. We've got some Christmas lights and stuff going on. But basically, this is our rogue cell phone tower. It's made of there's a power supply there, a software-defined radio and stuff. But with this, we can emulate, say, an AT&T tower or Verizon tower, whatever. So basically, how this works, one of our cell phones. There we go. Probably nobody in the back can see this laser pointer, can you? Okay, so cell phone connects to a software-defined radio, which has been pre-configured to do cellular radio communications. It talks to a laptop. It's running Linux. Some software called OpenBTS, which allows you to emulate cellular communications and asterisk for the voice over IP part. This is just a little glimpse of what OpenBTS looks like. You can configure it to have whatever identity you want. Kind of the important thing down here is down at the bottom, there's a red square that says My Cellular Network. You could call your network whatever you want. You can call it AT&T, then any phone that's looking for AT&T will try to connect to that. And like I said, if you downgrade to GSM, then it's not going to bother trying to authenticate the base station. This is an example of adding a device client to OpenBTS. So when I get one of these devices, the first thing I want to do is I want to find out what the phone number is, because that makes things a lot easier. So there's a couple ways to do this. There's something called the IMSI, the International Mobile Subscriber Identifier, I think. which the device will broadcast when it first starts up. So there's a couple ways to grab the IMSI. If you're lucky, you can just read it off of a SIM card in a phone or one of these devices that we're talking about. If it might be encrypted in the card, in which case you just sniff it with the OpenBTS and the tent that I was just talking about, and you can get the IMSI because it has to broadcast that to towers when it first comes up. After you get the IMSI, it looks like this. Well, people can't see. I'm not sure why I'm using these. So the IMSI looks something like this, and it breaks down to something like this. So the first 3 digits are the country code, the second 3 are the network code, and the last is the phone number if you're lucky. So that happens sometimes, and you've got the phone number. The problem is mobile number portability came in, I don't know, 15 years ago or so, and allows you to move your cell phone number to different carriers. Actually, what it means is that you can move the phone number to different SIM cards, and so therefore the IMSI that you get may not correlate to the phone number of the actual device. I've only run across this once in these little devices, and I think that's mostly because they're manufactured to just be directly sold. Nobody cares what the phone number is really, so it's not like a cell phone where you're changing phones every time Verizon is a good deal or whatever. But if you do run into this, there's a few ways around it. You can actually pay to just look up the IMSI and the phone number mapping. The providers have to be able to do that so you can buy access to those databases. The worst case is you can get a general idea of what phone number range the device is in, and you can start just vortexing us. Start a script and just text every device until you find the truth. Okay, so getting to a little more of the more interesting stuff, at least to me. So when I got one of these devices, we wanted to start dissecting it and figure out what it did. So the first thing I wanted to do is I wanted to look for serial traffic on the device, and so the little white thing here on the screen, that's a serial interface. And on the right side, all that mess is because the serial cable that they sent me didn't work. So I had to cut it up and try to figure it out myself. But eventually I got a serial signal off of this. And the thing about serial traffic is it's really easy to identify on an oscilloscope because serial traffic is all zeros or ones. It's either maximum voltage or minimum voltage. So when you see a square waveform like this, it's really easy to say, okay, that's the serial input or serial output. You know, every time these are going up and down, it's 0, 1, 0, 1. The longer ones are 2 zeros in a row, for example. So I looked at the pins on that little interface to find out the serial traffic. Once I got that, I found out that you could not write to the device. They had disabled the ability to send anything I sent over the serial input, didn't do anything. But I could read from it just fine. So there's all kinds of debugging information that's being dumped to the serial port. So this is just it booting up. Pretty interesting. What's more interesting is that it sent a whole bunch of information about how it was connecting to the cellular network. So this top red circle up here, it says ATE0V1 for people that are old like me. You might remember that modems used to use this thing called the AT command set to talk to things. And it turns out cellular modems still do the same thing. Bear that in mind because we're going to look at it again later. A little further down here, there's the AT command called CNUM, second red circle. That's just the phone number of the device. So that was really easy. I just had to listen to the serial traffic on the device and I had the cell phone number. And then like it shows the IMSI down here. And this is one of the cases, if you can read it, where the IMSI does not have the cell phone number right in it. And then you'll see here, it also gave me lots of useful information about the IP configuration. So what DNS server was using, what password it was using, blank out the passwords, but gave me a whole bunch of information down here. So that was really useful on the one device that I got. It spewed out all this awesome stuff on the serial port. The next one that I got, unfortunately, they had disabled all the debugging information in the serial port. So I plugged in, I saw nothing. Not even the electrical signals of the oscilloscope. I was like, okay, well, how else can I get that information, especially the cellular communications information? So the information that's coming from the cellular modem has to be controlled by the microcontroller equivalent to the CPU on the device. So I looked at the modem, looked at the board that it was on, and said, okay, how is the microcontroller on the board transmitting that serial information to the modem, like the AT commands and stuff? And fortunately, there was a pinout of this exact modem out there on the internet. So I could look at the pinout, try to figure out which pins on it were the serial interface. Had a nice little chart for me and gave me a few different options. They said like RX and transmit and receive and stuff, and I was like, okay, those are probably serial pins. So that narrowed it down a little bit. Threw my oscilloscope back on it and looked at those pins that I thought were likely and found a few that were doing serial traffic. And so I had like pretty good candidates for what pins on this on the modem chip were doing serial traffic to microcontroller. So then I got rid of the oscilloscope, got out a logic analyzer, and put the probes on the pads. And this is, I'm sure you can't see this in the back there. And, sorry, this is the best picture I could take with my cheap camera. But basically, there's pads all around the outside of the modem, and I had identified ones that I thought were the serial in and out from the microcontroller. And so I put probes on those to get the electrical signals off of them, connected to a logic analyzer. I tried to put a probe both on the receive and transmit and ground at the same time, but I'm not that coordinated. So about one at a time, but this is a logic analyzer. It's kind of a whole screenshot, but what we're interested in is you see this waveform, which is similar to the serial waveform that we saw before, but the logic analyzer knows what those actually mean. So it's actually printing the ASCII values of these waveforms as they go by. And this is actually just like a test program. So you'll see the numbers are above the waveform here, and then over here, it's actually decodes it as long as you pick the correct protocol and shows you what information is coming on. So what I end up with is a bunch of columns of numbers like this. And these are being read like top to bottom, and then the next column, top to bottom. Like reading Japanese as well. So what immediately jumped out at me, or maybe not immediately, but is in this first column we have, in these red letters, we see the same thing we saw in the serial debug port, right? The AT, E0, E1. So it's starting the cellular communication there. You see an OK command down here later. I had to, since I couldn't do transmit and receive at the same time, I had to do both and try to cross-correlate them, but eventually came up with the fact that did a bunch of commands to set up the modem and everything, and this number down here at the bottom, in the bottom right, broke out into a bunch of numbers that I don't know what they mean, and a phone number. So once again, have a phone number. This is kind of a more complicated way of doing it when the device does not have, or does have a bunch of protections already built into it, but eventually we got the phone number off the board. But that's not so bad, right? So I've got a phone number of a device that goes in my car. What could possibly go wrong? Then we have SMS. So I was thinking to myself, well, I can't call the car. Nobody's going to answer if I call this device that's plugged in under the dashboard of my car, but could I send it a text message? Thankfully, the company has a manual, and it happily tells me that there is indeed an SMS interface to the device. And I was really excited to look down at the bottom of this little part and see that it says, SMS can be used to report data, send remote requests to the device, or reprogram parameters. But it can't be that easy, can it? Yeah, it's that easy. There's no password or anything. So, this is my phone. I'm sending commands to the device, and it happily sends me back a bunch of information, some of which is more interesting than the other. Like over on the right-hand side here, I have no idea what it means. But it gives me lots of interesting information. And GPS coordinates in the car, as well as the heading and the speed of the car. So, with this phone number, I know what car the device is in. I can sit there and text it all day and get back the GPS coordinates, how fast it's going, where it's going, etc. That's already kind of bad. But okay, I can get the information on it, but it might be able to write to the device. Yes. So a bunch of basic SMS configuration commands that I found. Like you can set the username, you can set the password, you can set an IP address here in this third command. And that's basically the firewall. It says this IP address is allowed to connect to this device. That seems pretty useful. The port that the device listens on, that's pretty awesome. So at this point, I can send text messages that do most of the administrative functions on this device. And that's pretty awesome. I'm pretty happy with that. But what I really want to do is get an IP connection, because SMS messages, sometimes there's a few minutes delay or whatever like that. What I'd really like to have is an ongoing TCP/IP connection, or in this case, UDP IP connection, to the device so I can just administer it whenever I want. So the problem is that the carriers block inbound access. So you can't, generally on your phone or any other cellular device, you can't make an inbound connection to a TCP port or a UDP port. This is one of the problems with the cheap hackers. They found that there was this open port on the Sprint network, and other Sprint phones at least could connect to that port. Sprint has fixed that since then. AT&T, Verizon, I tried it, it doesn't work. So I was like, okay, so they're blocking my inbound connections, but let's not be discouraged. So in the documentation, I found these cool things that said, I'm looking at these two specifically. It says the IP address that the device will deliver maintenance messages to, and the port will send them to. Like, all right, create a UDP connection back to me if I can set my own IP address as that. And you may not be able to see, but down in the lower right-hand corner is a red box with an IP address that starts with there's an M in front of it. That means maintenance. And this is after I've already set the maintenance server for this particular device to be my IP address on CMU IP space. I was like, okay, so I set my IP address to be the maintenance server. Sat around, nothing happened. So I kept reading the manual, which is what I should have done to start with. And found this other parameter that I can set, which is how often the maintenance message is sent to the maintenance server. And so originally it was sent to like, I don't know, 300,000 seconds or something. Ridiculous. So I was like, okay, let's try to configure this the way I want it. So I start out here, I'm sending a text command just to see what the current settings are. It gives me the fact that the maintenance server is currently my an address at CMU that I had set previously. I query it, I ask what's the port that's listening on, it tells me what I would expect. I send it another command and say, okay, let's set the maintenance message interval to 78 hex, which is 120 seconds. So I won't have to wait so long. Verify that that took, and it did. And then I have to set the IP address to my current IP address because we use DHCP. And the only tricky part about that was it takes a 32-bit unsigned int, so I had to convert my IP address to an unsigned int, which I haven't done since I took networking 101. So thankfully, Google will do that really fast. So did that, sent the RC command again to see the current configuration, and sure enough, you can see that from up here to down there, it has changed the IP address. It's now trying to talk to my IP address. So I set up handy little netcap on my laptop. I tell it to listen on that port. I wait for no longer than 2 minutes, and I get this handy message back from the device saying, I have no idea, whatever it says. Some of that's kind of familiar to me, but I don't really care. I've got a UDP connection, right? So then I'm like, okay, I need to send a UDP packet back to it and see if it will actually do something with that UDP packet, because it may just discard it because it's not expecting administrative traffic on that port. But they probably just use the same code and just push any UDP packet that comes in to like the same functions or whatever. Okay, so I looked at this first and I was like, oh man, I don't know if it's worth this. That's a lot of stuff to try to figure out. But thankfully, all this first chunk down to here are the options, and they are in fact optional. So really the only things I had to worry about is setting a message header and message content. And once I looked at that, I'm like, okay, that's not so bad. Okay, so here we go. I built my own packet that should conform to the administrative protocol that that device uses. So going through these bytes, first one 80 is just because I have to set the most significant bit in the first byte. It's just part of the protocol. Then I set a 00 because it says it's an unacknowledged request. I was just guessing at this. I was like, I've got a 1 in 3 chance, so I'll try that one first. Third byte, the 07, I'm setting it to a unit request message, which seemed like the most likely thing where I didn't need to know anything about the device. I could just send it a request. Thankfully, that worked out. The next 2 bytes are just, I've set them to A's. This is the sequence number. It's totally arbitrary. You set it to whatever. That's just to track sessions as messages go back and forth. And finally, I've set this to a 02, which, based on the documentation, is a unit request message that, quote, returns a version report in an app message. So that seemed like about the most basic message I could possibly send back to this device. And then all the zeros are just required padding. So I made this little hex file that had that in it in binary, fired up netcat again and told it, in this case, to listen on the port, but also to, the first time it gets a message, to send back what I had just created in my own file that is hopefully packet that's useful. So what I first get back is the same message before, a bunch of stuff that I marginally understand. It sends back the message, which I verified over TCP dump. 30 seconds later, whatever, I get this different message. It shows the app version, the serial number on the MCU, the GPS, the radio, etc. Hey, sweet. So now I have a full back and forth UDP connection to the device to send administrative commands to it, despite the fact that there's a firewall blocking me from doing so. All right, so we're almost there. We've got administrative access to the device, either with SMS or TCP/IP. It's pretty awesome. But the only remaining problem as an attacker that I see is that the messages, the CAN message, which those are the messages that get sent onto the car's bus to receive information, they're hard-coded in the app that's on these devices. So they're expecting that you're only going to want certain information from the car. So for example, at the bottom, this is a typical OBD2 command that your mechanic might use or whatever, 70010D. That just means get current speed. There's a few dozen of those that are hard-coded in this device, I think up to 20. And so it's kind of cool to be able to send information, get back up the current speed, but I want to be able to send CAN messages of my own onto the car bus, right? So the next question is, can I modify the firmware so it will send what I want it to instead of what it's intended to do? So at the top here, you'll see this message up here. So to pull it out a little bit more, this is a text message that I could send. I can no longer do this because the vendor fixed it. But I could send this text message, says update the firmware, here's the version I want you to update to, and here's the arbitrary URL you should pull your firmware down. That's pretty cool. And the rest of this screen, you can just kind of see it gets the message, oh yeah, I should download this file. I don't know why you have to call it a .jar file, even though it's not a .jar file. However, it works, it downloads the file, it installs it. That's great, but that right now all I'm doing is I'm installing the existing version of the firmware back on the device, just to see if I can tell it which URL to get it from. So next question is, okay, I can tell it to grab firmware from an arbitrary URL. Can I modify the firmware and then tell it to grab my Trojan firmware from the URL? I looked at the binary, and the ends didn't look very random. So if it was digitally signed, digital signature is usually on either end of it, and it's going to look pretty random, but it looked very non-random. So I changed like one character in it, tried to download my firmware that I had changed, and I got this image CRC failure. Okay, well that's a checksum problem. Like it was expecting the checksum to be something, it wasn't right, so the modified firmware wouldn't load. So I was like, okay, well checksum's not like cryptographic or anything. It shouldn't be that hard to modify my firmware, generate the new checksum, and send the new checksum with the firmware. And yes, it wasn't that hard, and yet it was that hard because my coworker and I are apparently idiots, and we assumed it was a CRC32 code because nobody's used anything else for like years. And so we spent like 2 days trying to write Python scripts to generate this CRC32 code, and we're not getting anywhere. And finally I was like, you know, they did used to use CRC16 code, so we could try that. And so our little Python script found it in like 2 seconds. And basically said, like, if you do the CRC calculation of the file minus the 2 bytes at the end, it ends up as C16B, and if you look at the very end of the binary file, the last 2 bytes are C16B. So something that probably should have taken us like 10 minutes to this 2 days. But we figured out that it was being checked with the CRC code. So now I go back and I decide to change the firmware again. I just want to see if I can actually do it and get it to pass that CRC check. So I just decided to change the string, the word right to left. I wanted to keep the same number of characters, so I didn't mess up any buffers or anything like that. Didn't want to change how it worked or anything, just wanted to see if I could do modified firmware. So I changed it, I told it to download it, and I get this happy message that says, image CRC passed. All right. So, you know, it downloads the firmware, it reboots, and at the bottom you see instead of copyright this company, it says copyleft this company. Sweet. So that's just, I just changed the string right there. Like, you know, I'm not trying to do anything here, but the point is, if we can modify the firmware on this, what can we do? Anything. So I mean, the hard way would probably be you could reverse engineer this firmware and figure out exactly what they're doing, like where the maps are with the CAN messages, put your own CAN messages in and send it in. But honestly, that's too much work. Like, this is really a simple MCU, flash memory, like a GPS modem. I can write my own firmware to do what I want it to do instead. And, you know, well, it's me in a few weeks. A good person could probably do it in 4 days. But yeah, at this point, you have control, complete control over that device to send whatever you want to the call. So specifically, what can an attacker do if they could get one of these devices, if they could put their own firmware on these devices? So for example, you could track police cars in real time. You would talk to police fleets that use these types of devices, not these specifically necessarily, but you know, I'm sure criminals would love to be able to have an ongoing UDP/IP connection. They can just like grab the GPS coordinates of all the police cars in the area, whatever they want, as well as the heading and the speed and all that stuff. Or if you're like an evil business, you can collect a competitor's routes and customers. You know, you're like Dan's evil flower shop. You want to track your competitor. You're like, why is this person on the street? Their flower shop is getting way more business than me. I want to see exactly where their delivery vehicles go and where they stop, etc. You can track them. You can try to offer their customers a discount or something. A little more difficult, you could potentially eavesdrop on the occupants of the vehicles. So the CAN bus in the vehicle also talks to the IVI, which is the in-vehicle infotainment system. This is the thing that has a microphone that you use to make your Bluetooth hands-free calls while you're driving around. So it would be a lot more work, you know, but you could potentially get access to the microphone. You could potentially get access to the bus that holds the video signals from like the backup camera, etc. So you could eavesdrop. Denial of service. This actually is really easy. We had a Chevy Bolt that we were testing various things on for a while, and I could send it like 50 random CAN packets on the CAN bus, and it would just die. So it's really, that's actually a simple attack. If you had the phone numbers of a bunch of vehicles owned by a competitor or whatever, you know, some specific time, you just say, okay, I'm going to send this 50 packets, whatever it takes to kill that particular vehicle, and it turns off. That's going to have some impact on them. You know, you do that to a fleet of UPS vehicles, like on December 23rd, like that's going to have a business impact. You can unlock or steal vehicles. Unlocking is actually super simple. So if you want to just unlock things to steal things out of the vehicles, the CAN commands to unlock the cars are really basic. Stealing is a little more difficult because you have to fake the fact that the key is in the vehicle. Like if it has one of those remote hands-free key type ignitions, you have to make it think the key's in the vehicle to start, but it's not that difficult because you control the thing that says, did the key authenticate or not? So you just take the message that says, yes, the key authenticated. You can cause traffic jams. Obviously, if you toss a fleet of vehicles or something like that, you know, imagine if you decided to shut down a whole bunch of cabs at rush hour in Manhattan or something. Not so good. You could potentially cause crashes. Like we've all seen the Jeep video where they, you know, mess with the engine and stuff. And you can get to at least the steering and brakes on most cars because with cruise control, they have to be computer controlled. Steering is getting there. Acceleration and brakes, not necessarily steering. So that's, you know, getting towards the more difficult type of attacks. But if you really want to, maybe you can cause crashes. I don't know why you want to. I mean, I can imagine, but I'm not the kind of person who wants to cause a car crash. So there's a lot of things. You know, this is a little $100 device. People are just buying these in bulk and throwing them in tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of cars without thinking about the risks that are involved. So kind of the moral of the story, other than the fact that it's fun to reverse engineer with devices like this, is first of all, if you're using fleet telematics, these vehicles, they're now part of your corporate network. So one of the big problems we've had talking to people about this is the fact that the fleet managers are buying these because they've been told, hey, you need to know where your cars are. So they go out and buy it. They don't know anything about IT or IT security, which is fine because I don't know anything about how to maintain cars. But the point is, they don't understand that this is an IT issue. The IT people think, oh, I'm just worried about my routers and my PCs and stuff. Why would I worry about my cars? Like, they are now part of your network, and somebody needs to do something. And then also, you know, the complex supply chain. I mean, this is a basic vulnerability. You know, we got full access to this based on the fact that there was an SMS function that the original manufacturer thought this might be handy to somebody. They threw it in there. The people that built out the systems didn't think about the fact it was in there. The people that resold it didn't think about the fact. So you end up with potentially all these devices that have this functionality that nobody ever bothered to secure or even think about. And it's not a vulnerability in the sense, like I said, of buffer overflow or anything. It's just like bad configuration that made its way through this long, complex supply chain and procurement system and ended up out in the world. Fortunately, in this case, it didn't end up out in the world because we did stop it. But so that's kind of like the two morals, I guess, takeaways is the part of your network, and vulnerability doesn't have to be some super sweet hack, on the latest Windows 10 antivirus, whatever. It can just be like somebody didn't bother to configure something and it made its way through the whole supply chain without getting fixed. So thankfully we did this. We told the vendors they were super awesome about fixing it right away. So this specific vulnerability, sorry, you'll have to do my own vulnerabilities. This won't help you. And it was long. So that is it. I have a couple minutes left, I think, for questions. Yes, sir.
Do you know if these vendors do patch remediation, like they send out firmware updates in the air? If so, then is that exploded as well?
Yeah, so I guess there's two answers to that, at least. So I've worked with the manufacturer of these devices a lot. Like I said, they were super handy. And the process for them is that when it first boots up, they go out and look for new firmware, and download it. And since we've talked to them, they're now verifying who they're downloading the firmware from. They have now added signing to the binaries, etc. There's another layer of configuration that happens after that, where the people that buy the device and build the systems and sell them, might not be the same people, but they have to configure it too. And so they have some sort of ongoing process where they send configuration things. And that's what the SMS is intended for, is so that they can configure it. So now we've worked with these companies and they've put passwords on their UDP connection, they put passwords on their SMS, use SSL, stuff like that. So, but they just, nobody had ever thought about the fact that somebody would do this. Yes?
I was just wondering which ECUs you've tested. Is it only GM, or is it, for instance, like Bosch, the Votronic 7 series and 8 series actually have like the first 16 addresses in the EEPROM writable, dynamically writable?
The only built-in TCUs, okay, so there's the one, things like this that can plug into the OBD2 port. There's also things that can be hardwired in. The only ones that I can say that I've tested are GM.
Okay. I was wondering, yeah, because for a lot of German cars, they use the Bosch, and I think there's 7 and 8 series Votronic.
Yes.
Were quite susceptible for the first 16 memory addresses of the EEPROM being overwritable dynamically.
May be true. So, sorry, there's some things that we're a couple of
Outside of the scope, yeah.
Doing research on. So, yes, sir.
When you went through this, did you see any reasonable way that this could be regulated? That if you're going to make this type of device, these are the tests you must be able to pass in order for you to be safe inside a vehicle?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of conversation going on about that. This was partially funded by Department of Transportation, and the aftermarket, especially, is really unregulated. Like, it's easier, not easy, but you can make regulations for cars. There's SCAR going to make some cybersecurity, at least standards, if not regulations. Aftermarket's still pretty wide open. And then there's things like there's the right to repair. So if you buy a car, like, the manufacturer can't stop you from doing stupid things to your car, even if it causes a security problem. So that conversation is happening constantly. I don't even know if I have an opinion about what is the best way or best way not to do it. I think if I would try to put the responsibility, if you will, on the vendors and manufacturers and the people that are buying stuff, like to manage fleets, to do it right now. I wouldn't wait on the government to regulate these things. But like I said, we've talked to a lot of fleet managers, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool. Can you test these devices to see if they're reasonably secure?" Like, I'm never going to say, "Oh, yes, that's secure," but so it's an ongoing issue, I guess. If there's nobody else, thank you very much.